Hey guys, good afternoon. You guys going to start dozing off after a good lunch? We don't need to stretch. Great. Fantastic. Okay, so where did we leave off? Project teams, huh? Right? Yeah, we were here. Project resources and stakeholders. So these were examples of stakeholders. Project team resources, project sponsor, customers, business partners, organizational groups, functional managers, all government regulators. You're part of your project. You're part of the stakeholders, the part of the stakeholders and consultants. Okay? What happens if you rub one of your stakeholders the wrong way? What happens? Where's the other mic? Somebody took the mic for lunch. What happens? If you rub one of your stakeholders the wrong way, rub the wrong way, if you disagree with one of your stakeholders, what happens?
Our own stakeholders for the projects are the simple users, which basically falls in academic research and developers. So the people who can disagree with, okay.
Who are your stakeholders?
Um,
Can you name? Okay, this is very important. Okay. But you need it. Yes. Olu, in C for Map IT, CMAP, CMAPIT.com, who are your stakeholders? Users, okay. Mm-hmm. World Bank, development agencies. Who else? Developers. Who else? Kivuva. This. The sponsor? Sponsor. And sponsor funder. Partners. Like? Hmm? Okay. So your technology partner. Okay. Uh-huh. Is that all? Who do you think Olu has missed out on his list? Who do you think Olu has missed out on his list? Hmm? Project team. Government. You seem to have a phobia for government, Olu. But you agree that they are stakeholder? And they're no buts. They're either stakeholder or not. Okay. They're what?
Okay, what started the project is the gaps in the system. The government failing to fill up its roles, basically. And I think the most critical part of our work is also staying outside server base, in servers outside the country. So basically, what would develop at the end of the day brings transparency to the system. So it's anti-government to an extent, because no government wants the citizens to be active. So that's...
And yet you still have to deal with them. Eh? That's the dilemma we face sometimes, right? All right, project teams. The project team typically includes the project manager and the group of individuals who act together in performing the work of the project to achieve its objectives. Traditional project team roles: you have project team staff, project manager, consultants, coordinators, project management office staff, etc. Project staff: tactical resources who identify and execute upon the tasks to be completed. Subject matter experts: finance, legal, HR, etc. Business partners, line of business managers, or individual contributors. Project team members can either be dedicated or shared to the project. I think let's come to that issue that my brother here, Wilberforce, talked about in the morning. Remember what Wilberforce said? His concern. Do you want to repeat that again, Wilberforce? About dedicated project team and the conflict sometimes that happen between dedicated project teams and management.
Sure. Okay, what normally happens is that sometimes you find there's a business team. These are the guys who want to ship the product and go to the customer. And then there's the production team. These are the guys who are cooking the whole product that is to be shipped. So you find that the guys from the customer facing team have some feedback which the developers may not see it as important. At the same time, the technical team may have some feedback which the business team can say, no, this one is not important to our customers. So there'll be a debate happening in the office sometimes, that push and pull happening. So that's the concern which I was trying to raise earlier. Yeah, that what normally happens there and how can it be solved? Yeah.
I want to answer part of his question by a case study. By a case study done by Harvard Business Review on BMW. So BMW had project 3. They were developing the Series 3 that time. And the project team were designers, marketing people, engineers, and then what they forgot to include in the team were accountants, finance people. Okay. So you had project 3. And these guys had developed, at that time, a revolutionary product in that category. And they had gone to the details of choosing, you know, the glove compartment of a vehicle? Yeah? They had then included soft calf leather. Very expensive. And when the accountants were looking at all the cost, these two teams were not communicating. The accountants were sitting in their offices, and the designers and other engineers were doing their stuff in the studios. So the accountants looked at all these costs, and they were looking at cutting costs on that project. And what did they do? They zeroed in on this calf leather that nobody can see, at least according to them, and removed it and put some synthetic fiber. The design team rebelled and said, hell no, we're not doing that. They are almost going on strike. The project director decided to bring the two teams together. And he brought them in, he brought the accountants together and said, this is what you guys have done. And he removed a magazine. Can I? Yes. Sorry, ladies, I'm about to say something sensitive, but my apologies for your sensitivities. He took out a Playboy magazine. And what he did, for those men who read Playboy or have heard of it, there's always a center page, center spread. Look at the pictures, sorry. I stand corrected. I stand corrected. So there's always a center page of a really beautiful, almost naked lady on Playboy magazine. So what did he do? This lady, beautiful smile. He took a black pen and he painted one of the tooth black. And then he showed the magazine, the picture to the accountant and told him, this is what you've done to the car. This woman now okay. Is this photo okay? The accountants put back the calf leather. What was that issue there? What was the problem there? Communication. Simple communication. So sometimes the biggest problems have a very simple solution. Just talk to me. Just talk to me. Or let's work together on this thing. Are we together? Awareness also, which is sort of part of communication, because you can make me aware of that if I'm not aware of it. All right. Governance. The oversight function aligned with the organization's governance model and the project life cycle and/or process methodology. This framework provides the project team success and deliverable acceptable criteria, issue management and escalation protocols. This is very important. Issues management. In software, we always have, we log in problems with the code and stuff like that, yeah? And then we escalate it. Because logging in a problem alone is not enough. You must be able to escalate it. Communications management protocols, project decision-making processes, alignment of projects with corresponding programs or portfolios, stage gate or phased review process management, change management review and approval protocols, internal stakeholder alignment. I'll probably add external stakeholder alignment too. Okay. A management structure that standardizes the project-related governance processes and facilitates the sharing of resources, methodologies, tools, and techniques. Facilitates. You can't do a project. You see, this issue of silos in organizations is a real big problem. Real big problem. I sit on the board of Longhorn Publishers, which is a leading publishing house in East Africa. And one of the issues we resolved a few years back was where publishing was not talking to the management of customers. So, to give you an analogy, it's like you have a restaurant and the cooks in the kitchen are just cooking food. They're not taking orders. They're just cooking food. What's going to happen? No, nobody's going to eat. Yeah? You must have a link between the customer and the guys who are cooking in there. Because the cook cannot take orders and then go and cook. And yet, if the cook doesn't get orders and starts cooking his own things, yeah, he's going to cook his mother's favorite meal. And for him, it's the best meal ever, but who cares? Are we together? Yeah. The project management office. The function of a PMO is to support project managers, managing shared resources across all projects. What will happen in organizations is that resources must be shared. For example, if you have a project management office, do you need your own dedicated internet link? But then what do you find? Young people love to torrent, isn't it? The latest series. Which one? Which one do you guys love? Huh? Which one? Despot. Game of Thrones. Sorry? When I say young, I don't necessarily mean age. We all torrent these days. Game of Thrones. So at the time when we need those internet resources most, what's happening? Everybody is torrenting. So we must be able to manage those resources because they're all shared resources. Identifying and developing project management methodology, best practices and standards. Coaching, mentoring, training and oversight. Developing, managing and monitoring usage of policies, procedures and templates. Coordinating communication across the organization regarding project management discipline. If you say you will get it done tomorrow, get it done tomorrow. If for some reason you feel that there's going to be a delay, communicate in advance. Don't wait until the day you are supposed to deliver and say, oh, sorry guys, I need 1 more week. What happens? You mess up everybody else's timelines, right? Projects are temporary initiatives that have a defined beginning and ending. Project outcomes are directly affected by the triple constraint of time, scope, and cost. Project management is a formal discipline that applies knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities in order to meet the defined project requirements. Successful projects rely on people, processes, tools, techniques, oversight, structure, leadership, and organization. So you're seeing, this is, you remember when we talked in the morning about an orchestra? Every part of that orchestra must be doing what they're supposed to be doing at the right time, at the right tonality, and so on, right? Otherwise, what do you get? Total discord. All right, so we're about to finish our first session. Today morning was quite interesting, so we sort of overlapped. Let's review what we've learned. How are projects traditionally organized? How are projects traditionally organized? This is just a recap. Individual projects, programs, and portfolios. Do you remember that? Yeah? Don't worry, these slides will all be shared. What are the three common project organizational structures? Anyone? Functional, projectized, and metrics. Project team members can either be dash or dash to the project. Project team members can either be dash or dash to the project. Shared or? Shared or dedicated? Great. I can see we are learning. True or false? Projects end in only one of two ways. Project objectives have been achieved. Project is terminated because its objective not or cannot be met, or when the need for the project no longer exists. True or false? True. Are you sure? False? False? Who says true? 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 The primary function of a project management office is to support. To support? Are you sure? Sure. Thanks, guys. So I would like us to watch this video about how things can go wrong. Can we switch off this light? No, it's okay. It's okay, don't worry.
You were given some feed, remember?
We have met that objective and then some. The Bradley Armored Personnel Carrier will bring troops to a combat zone swiftly, efficiently, and safely. It will hold 11 men, plus a driver, and features a 20-millimeter cannon, which will provide ample firepower and at the same time flexibility. Lightly armored, speedy, and solidly engineered, our troops will be arriving at the battlefield in the very finest American technology has to offer. And at $1.5 million per, a real bargain.
Nice work, Colonel. Outstanding. Damn impressive.
In other words, it was designed to be a big taxi cab, drive guys to the battlefield and go back home.
But how did it end up with a turret on top?
Well, this is all well and good, Colonel Smith, but something wrong, General? Yeah, with this gorilla in production, I don't suppose there's going to be anything left in the budget for my scout. Doubt it, Bob. You don't need scout.
You have radar, air recon, satellites.
You always need a scout. And you know what I'm thinking? Why couldn't this thing serve as a scout? But it's a troop carrier, General. But this is a speedy vehicle. Why can't it be both? Well, swiftly. We have met that objective and then some. The Bradley Armored Personnel Carrier will bring troops to a combat zone swiftly, efficiently, and safely. It will hold 11 men, plus a driver, and features a 20-millimeter cannon, which will provide ample firepower and at the same time flexibility. Lightly armored, speedy, and solidly engineered, our troops will be arriving at the battlefield in the very finest American technology has to offer. And at $1.5 million per, a real bargain.
Nice work, Colonel. Outstanding. Damn impressive.
In other words, it was designed to be a big taxi cab, drive guys to the battlefield and go back home.
But how did it end up with a turret on top?
Well, this is all well and good, Colonel Smith, but...
Something wrong, General?
Well, with this gorilla in production, I don't suppose there's going to be anything left in the budget for my scout.
Dolly, Bob. You don't need scouts. You have radar, air recon, satellites.
You always need a scout. And you know what I'm thinking? Why couldn't this thing serve as a scout?
But it's a troop carrier, General.
But this is a speedy vehicle. Why can't it be both?
Well, for one thing, it's too big. And for the other, you can't really see out all that much from inside.
Sounds like a design flaw to me.
Design flaw? No.
We'll just stick a turret on top with lots of opticals.
But then, sir, it'll be even bigger.
Well, what's your problem, Smith? Not elegant enough for you?
Let me just pause. What do you think is happening here? Scope creep? Serious miscommunication? But before scope creep, what? Lack of engagement with the users of the product. What else? Are you seeing what the top leadership is doing to the colonel? Literally bullying him, isn't it? Okay. The original plan was to build a troop carrier. Remember when that guy is asking, okay, so this is the biggest taxi driving the troops into the battlefield. How did it end up with a turret on top? Okay, so we're about to find out. Sorry? YouTube. I'm not sure.
Well, the thing is, General, it's kind of hard to do a sneak and peek when you're over 10 feet tall.
He's got a point, Bob.
Well, all I know is we need a scout. This is fast enough to do the job, and it's funded.
Well, actually, we're a hair over budget.
You turned the Bradley into a scout. We're going to be selling them off to some El Presidente de Chimichanga in no time.
Anything for surveillance ends up south of the border before the paint even dries.
When you needed that anti-aircraft gun, who backed you up on that?
You did, Bob.
And who testified to appropriations on behalf of that gun?
You did, Bob.
I'm talking to appropriations next week. Now, do I sell you on my scout or do I not?
You did, Bob. And how about some portholes along the side for individual firearms so the fellows can stick out their guns and shoot people?
Good. And you know what, Colonel? We already have the turret. We ought to get the biggest bang we can up there.
I'm sorry, bang, sir?
You can't hurt anybody with that pansy-ass gun. Add on some firepower.
Where am I supposed to fit the extra ammo?
I don't know. Can you just...
Guys are talking in their ivory towers, and then some guy in some corner is being given instructions.
shift things around, make some room.
You already got 4,400 rounds of machine gun ammo. Now you want to add 25 millimeter shells.
General wants his ammo.
You can't have his ammo unless he runs alongside this thing carrying it.
Well, can you just squeeze it in?
No.
Oh, come on, just squeeze it in.
We're not trying on Levi's here, Colonel.
Are you telling me that in a vehicle this size you can't find room for a few rounds of ammunition?
Not in its current configuration, no, sir.
So the configuration's wrong.
There must be something you can dump.
Dump, sir?
Something you don't need.
General, the interior is very spare. Besides the ammunition and the men...
Maybe you can leave one of the fellows behind. Put the ammo where the men go.
Sir, it is a troop carrier.
So, make a couple extra trips. What's the difference?
They want a transport that doesn't carry men and a scout that's got a cannon as big as a tank's on it.
And portholes.
Oh, great, portholes. So the guys can shoot out whatever they can't hit with their cannon.
You don't have to buy the damn thing, Jones. Just draw it. That's one hell of a cannon.
That's the problem.
Why?
You go out in the battlefield with this pecker sticking out of your turret, and the enemy's gonna unload on you with all they got. Might as well paint a big red bullseye on the side.
But it's a troop carrier, not a tank.
Do you want me to put a sign on it in 50 languages? I'm a troop carrier, not a tank. Please don't shoot at me.
This was going to be so beautiful.
That's good work, Smith. Looks perfect to me.
Thank you, sir.
Thing is,
Yes, General?
looks a little like a tank with that cannon on top. Probably gonna draw more fire.
Actually, sir, that has come to our attention.
We know it's not a tank, but will the other side?
I guess we could always thicken the armor, toughen up the hide a bit. Colonel Smith, could you explain why you put those portholes there?
Yes, sir. As per your request, so the men could shoot out at the enemy.
You're joking, aren't you?
Besides, portholes? What are we in now, the Navy? Say, you think you could make this thing amphibious? You know, put the troops across a river?
No. No, sir. No. No.
Amphibious? The Bradley's supposed to swim?
In theory, at least.
Amphibious troop carrier / scout / tank. Couple more months, I bet they can get this thing to fly.
What's this in the margin? Please help me. I am losing my mind. RLS.
Lieutenant Colonel Robert Laurel Smith, Head of Oversight and Development.
Aluminum. This thing's got an aluminum skin.
Huh?
Anything an enemy tank fires at is gonna go through it like a hot knife through butter.
We're doing the specs on using steel rather than aluminum. Of course, steel is much heavier than aluminum, so it won't go as fast.
No, we can't lose speed. We lose speed, it won't work as a scout vehicle.
It won't keep pace with our M1 tanks either.
Thicker armor's a reactive measure. Let's think proactive here. I say equip the thing with anti-tank missiles. Then it can blast those enemy tanks before they get a chance to fire. What do you think, Colonel?
Fine!
Anti-tank missiles?
I don't know.
Where do I put them? The men will have to wear the missiles as hats.
I don't know, Jones. That's why you get paid the big bucks.
Colonel, there's no room. We're not talking
Got a
about...
pair of Levi's. I know! God damn it! What we are talking about is 11 years with nothing to show for it. Except that also the size of the District of Columbia and a career that's on permanent hold. You see this? I've been a bird colonel so long, I swear I've grown feathers. Now, if you have to design hats to hold those goddamn missiles, then just do it. Ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, please. If you'd all just take your seats. Thank you. We are pleased to present a scale model of the new Bradley fighting vehicle. 6 men.
How many was it supposed to carry?
11.
Bradley is outfitted with the most sophisticated surveillance equipment ever developed. It is also equipped with a rapid-fire cannon and an anti-tank rocket launcher.
Which means it's loaded with
1,500 shells and 10-tow anti-tank missiles.
So in summation, gentlemen, what you have before you is
a troop transport that can't carry troops, a reconnaissance vehicle that's too conspicuous to do reconnaissance,
And a quasi-tank that has less armor than a snowblower, but has enough ammo to take out half of DC.
Fantastic. Congrats.
What are the lessons? I know the sound wasn't very clear, but I think they are very clear lessons. The first thing, the Bradley Project. What happened? What went so wrong? From what president? From Nixon to Reagan. How many years are those? 11 years. Yes. 11 years. So, what could they have done better? Well, considering that that's government, so sorry, William.
You asked earlier if there are more than 2 ways in which a project can finish. This is one of the ways a project can finish. This is a way where you did not achieve your original objectives, but you achieved some objectives. That's true of most projects. How many projects achieve all their objectives? Time, cost, performance. You said it earlier, only ones for white elephants. That's why I disagreed about the 2 ways that projects can finish. This is another way projects can finish.
Well, what do you guys think? What do you guys think? Is it?
Yes,
How
because
so?
it was able to ease the pressure on his own direct staff. It communicates better.
Did you
with-
see how many pills he was taking in that office? The guy was about to have a heart attack. And did you see how he was screaming at his team? Yes.
It was more a trickle down than a feedback between the bottom and the upper management. And from inception, the requirements were never clear because they were never agreed upon.
Why do you think the requirements were never clear, they were never agreed upon? Why do you think so? Those 3 generals, what were they doing? They weren't even sure what they wanted. Is that a way to start a project? No clear direction. They weren't sure whether they wanted a tank, a troop carrier, a reconnaissance vehicle. You want to say something? Yes. Yes, Marcel.
my understanding. It's good. It's good. Oh, okay.
Just speak.
Okay, sorry. But my understanding of how the movie, the clip you showed us, is that environment will always change. The generals were simply adapting to the changing environment. So I don't think they were wrong. I don't think they confused anyone. I think it's just simply showing you that over time, you have to adapt. Am I making sense?
But, okay. You see, adapting means you're starting from somewhere, isn't it? What are you adapting? To what environment are you adapting to? It wasn't even clear what these guys wanted to do in the first place. So, see, if you want to adapt to winter, and you know that winter will be followed by spring, isn't it? Then you have a plan. But if you don't know it's winter, and you don't know that winter is going to be followed by spring, how do you adopt? How do you adopt? Do you get where I'm coming from? You're lost. You're choosing not to hear. Okay, that's another reason why projects fail, because you refuse to hear. Yeah? Did they really want a troop carrier? Because remember, there were three generals. One was talking about shooting people. The other one was talking about a troop carrier, and the other one was talking about a reconnaissance vehicle. So three objectives under one project.
I don't get that part.
Hmm?
I didn't get that part.
You didn't get that part. Okay. You want to say something? Okay. Okay. Yes.
Yes, I think this should not have happened if there was only one director on the project.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. I think the biggest, see, there's other thing. There's a project manager, but there's also something I may have missed out. A project champion. A project champion is the person who sponsors that project, who's sort of above the project manager. So in a company, the project champion can possibly be a CEO. Can you imagine a project in an organization where the champion is the chief marketing officer and the chief financial officer? Do you think that project is ever going to achieve it? Those two talk two different languages. One wants to save money. The other one wants to save to spend money. Okay. Okay. Thanks. Let's move to the next, which is project communication. Have we agreed on what?
So I'm just asking if we've agreed on how things should have happened.
Will we really agree how things should have happened? Okay. How do you think they could have done better, Ian? How do you think they could have done better?
That's my question. Maybe you haven't.
I think we've probably answered part of the question. First, you have 3 project champions. You have a project manager, the colonel, who's being pulled in 3 different directions. And yet, he cannot disappoint any one of his generals. We don't know who he's reporting to directly, because if he did, actually, he could have ignored the other two.
So it's about roles.
It's about roles. And then now, what the colonel is doing is he's transferring all his frustration to his team. Do you remember the part where he told him, just draw it? You're not going to buy it, just draw it. Okay. So, the first thing, clear roles, correct? Second, that project manager needed to know what the objectives were. Was it a troop carrier? Was it a reconnaissance vehicle? Or was it a fighting vehicle? Maybe in 2016 that could be achieved with technology, but that was 1970s, isn't it? Or is it late 60s? So those are the issues the guy was dealing with. The guy was losing hair every day, literally. Okay, thanks. So let's move on to communications. Okay, so we are going to cover communications in our next session. I think we've seen how important communication is, right? Even in that video, as unclear as it was, we could see that guys were talking their own languages. Yeah? So, the processes that are required to ensure timely and appropriate planning, collection, creation, distribution, storage, retrieval, management, control, monitoring, and the ultimate disposition of project information. The first thing is planned communications management, determining the information and communication needs for the stakeholders. Who needs what information, when they will need it, and how it will be given to them. Imagine if the generals and the colonel and the designers and the procurement team were sitting together. in one room, what do you think would have happened? They'll be faster.
The different expertise would each give their own experiences and what could work and what could not work, which would help in making decisions.
Absolutely. And probably, if there was a proper line of communication and people didn't fear rank, the generals would have been told what? It's not possible. Or we can do it better this way. Yeah? Manage communications, making the project information in accordance with the communication management plan. So, even within every project, there has to be a communication management plan. And as we move along, you'll see how important this is. Control communications. Ensure the information needs of the project stakeholders are met. So, the communication model, it involves the exchange of information, the sender and the receiver. The sender is responsible of making the information clear and ambiguous and complete to the receiver. The receiver has to ensure that the information received is understood and correctly understood. Not only understood, but correctly understood. So, when it's a no, it's a no. It can be done. It's not no, but. It can be done, but. What happens the minute you put a but in a positive statement? What happens? There's uncertainty. We are not sure. You have to be clear, you have to be precise. Communication barriers. Noisy space, visual distractions, distance, tiredness, culture, language, of course, encoding messages badly, sender uses emotionally charged words or statements, sender speaks too slow or too much, information overload. You know, I always tell my kids about email etiquette. Do you know about email etiquette? We do? Do you know what happens, what you mean when you write in caps on an email? Do you know what it means when you write in caps on an email? No? You don't? You're shouting. How about using SMS language on an email? It's unprofessional. Well, it depends on who you're communicating to. The millennials don't really care about those things. They don't even know what the difference is. So, how we communicate is really important. How about culture? How about culture? What happens with culture? For example, a Chinese or a Japanese, when you're greeting them, what do? They bow, isn't it? For us Muslims, bowing is to another person is basically worshipping that person. So you see how cultural differences can create serious problems. Misinterpretation. So how do you, so if you have a team that is a project team that is made up of Japanese, Muslims, Christians, other cultures, what is the first thing you do from a communication perspective? Yes, Ian.
I guess the first thing would be for everyone to be aware of their differences and henceforth agree on a communication protocol to say this is how we are going to be communicating. This is the standard way of, you know.
Anyone else wants to say something? So, differences should not necessarily be a disadvantage. In fact, there is strength in diversity, isn't it? But cultural issues can really be bad. Tell you a story about in the 70s, Korean Airlines had one of the worst airplane safety records in history. And they tried to figure out why, what the problem was. So they did some research. Do you know what they discovered? Culturally, the pilot and his first officer, right? The first officer is usually much younger than the pilot. The first officer could not even tell the pilot anything. Couldn't correct him, and we are human beings. So, and those days, planes were not as sort of sophisticated as they are today. So it took only one split wrong decision for a crash. So they discovered one particular plane where they were coming to land and there was zero visibility, absolutely zero visibility. And the navigation equipment had gone off. The first pilot, the first officer, instead of telling the pilot, you're doing something wrong, he was trying to do it in a roundabout way. First praising the pilot, you don't have time for that. What do you think an American or a European would have done? What do you think they would have done? Absolutely, and probably saved lives. Yes. As my son would say, it's a WTF moment, if you know what that means. WTF? Anybody? So, cultural differences. So the point is, communication sometimes is a matter of life and death. Yeah? Yes, Ian?
Random thing, could you please write your Twitter handle? Yes.
Good housekeeping point. Ali H. Kasim at, and the hashtag. Let me charge. See, there are certain words in Swahili that you cannot, there are certain Japanese words that you cannot speak in Swahili. And I'm sure there are examples of that across the world. So the first thing when you have a multi-diversified, multidisciplinary team is that you lay everything on the table. Make no assumptions about people's cultures and people's beliefs. talk about them. Really critical. And especially in today's world where, I mean, we all are on webinars every other day with participants all the way from Togo to South Africa, to Nairobi, to New York, to Botswana. So we must now be global in our thinking if we want to succeed in this world. And we must start knowing other people's cultures and understanding the do's and the don'ts, right? Make the message relevant for the receiver. Reduce the message to its simplest terms. Organize the term into a series of stages. Repeat the key points. The dimensions of communications. First, internal, which is within the project, and external, customers, other projects, the media, the public. Formal, reports, memos, briefings, and informal, emails, ad hoc discussions. Let me ask you guys a question. What is acceptable communication from an email perspective in terms of time lag? What's acceptable? I know we're all not perfect, but what's acceptable? 1 hour to respond to an email, 2 hours, 24 hours, 48, never. As soon as you receive the mail? What if I don't have an email? What if we are communicating using what's that tool that we talked about in the morning? Slack. What if we are using Slack? Does it mean that we are not communicating because we don't use email? What happens? How about updates? Facebook updates, social media, Twitter, LinkedIn. Is that a better way of communicating? Is there a yes or a no in these questions? So, if a group of 20-somethings decide that they will best communicate through a WhatsApp user group, is that wrong? But then there's a 50-year-old in that group who has never heard of WhatsApp. What happens? You teach him. That's one way of looking at it. Yeah? Okay. So, vertical, up and down the organization, and horizontal with peers. Okay? Official, newsletters, annual reports, and unofficial, off-the-record communications. Written and oral. Now, here's the interesting one. Verbal and non-verbal. Voice inflections, body language. Can you imagine how these are important to your project? Non-verbal communication. Why do you think non-verbal communication is so important in a project scenario? Does it mean it's a no when I say no? Does it mean it's a yes when I say yes? There's a way I can say no and it means yes, and there's a way I can say yes and it means no. Am I talking a foreign language? Well, actually I am, because English is a foreign language, but but you know what I mean. Yeah? So the things sometimes we don't say are the ones most important. Communication skills. Listening actively and effectively. Questioning, probing ideas and situations to ensure better understanding. Some of the best communicators Communicate through asking questions. Or listen. Listening is one of the best forms of communicating. Do you know that? Do you guys agree? Oh, we all so in love with our own voices. We want to continue talking and talking and not listening to anybody. Educating to increase teams' knowledge so that they can be more effective. Fact-finding to identify or confirm information. Setting and managing expectations. Persuading a person or organization to perform an action. Negotiating to achieve mutually acceptable agreements between parties. Resolving conflict to prevent disruptive impacts. And summarizing, recapping, and identifying the next steps. Any questions here? Anything you may not be clear about? A lot of this we sort of covered in the morning, so it's just sort of a bit of a recap. Now, communication forms. Written. They must be precise, transmitted through the medium of correspondence. Example, project charter, scope statement, project plan, WBS, I'm not sure what that is. Work breakdown structure. Thank you, Kivuva. Project status, complex issues, contract-related communication. Written, informal. Written but informal. Email, notes, memos, letters, regular communication with team members. Oral, formal. High degree of flexibility. Use the medium of personal contact, group meetings, or telephone. Presentation, speeches, negotiation, conflict resolution. Oral, informal. Use the medium of personal contact, group meetings, or telephone. Conversation with team members, project meetings, break room, or war room conversations. Lastly, nonverbal. Can you imagine? Nonverbal is 55% of total communication. You see how important that is? The things you don't say, the look you give me, your body language, I'm talking and you're turning away, or I'm talking and you're busy on your laptop or your telephone, your mobile phone. You're in a group discussion and half of you are on WhatsApp. What message are you giving to the other group members? Not interested. You're not saying anything. But by the fact that you're not saying anything and doing something else, what are you telling them? You're wasting time. It's a blah, 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 blah. Right? So, really important. Improving listening. Don't interrupt. Somebody is talking, they haven't finished, interrupting. Put the speaker at ease. Appear interested even if you're not. Yeah? Cut out distractions. Periodically sum up what was said. It's important to just recap. There's a lot of, I believe a lot of us today, in a few years back, this was a medical condition. Have you guys heard of ADHD? What does it mean? Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. You know, we all have it today. You're listening to me, and you are listening to me. You're on your phone, you are on WhatsApp, you're on your tablet, you're listening to your partner, and somehow things are still seeping through. So, recapping what was said sometimes cuts through that noise. Okay. Unfortunately, we have to adapt to the situations we find ourselves. I tell my wife that at Saturday lunchtime, 1 o'clock, I log off the Matrix. Who watched the Matrix trilogy? I think most of us did. So the Matrix is this whole sort of make-believe world that humans find themselves in. And that's where we are at today. We are always on. What happens when you walk into a restaurant? What's the first thing you ask for? Water. You ask for Wi-Fi. That's the first thing we do. We want to log into that matrix. Yeah? So we must find time to get out of that. Attention, guys. 80% of time is spent in communicating. 80% of time. Why do you think WhatsApp has become the most popular app today? Do you know how many people use WhatsApp? Even my grandmother is on WhatsApp, the family group, yeah. 1 billion plus. WhatsApp is a very interesting story, just as an aside. Do you know the founder of WhatsApp failed an interview at Facebook? You're aware? 2 years later, what happened? He sold WhatsApp to Facebook for how much? $19 billion. That was the deal announced. By the time the deal closed, it had reached $22 billion. That was the most expensive mistake Mark Zuckerberg has ever made. Yeah, if you had hired him, you wouldn't have had to dole out $21 billion. So, 80% of time is spent in communicating. 50% of communicating time is spent listening. How many of us actually do listen to people when they are talking to us? Or you listen to what you want to listen and everything else is noise. You filter everything else. Is that the best way to communicate? Everything else is blah, blah, blah if you don't want to hear it. Most people recall 50% of what they hear immediately after. After 2 months, 25% is recalled. Yeah? The process of developing an appropriate approach and plan for project communication based on stakeholder information, needs and requirements, and available organizational assets. That's plan communications management. You must plan communications management. It just doesn't happen. Okay? It's critical to your project. You must actually really spend time on it. So you have inputs, which are project management plan, stakeholder register, enterprise environmental factors, organizational process assets. The tools and techniques are communication requirements analysis, communication technology, communication models, communication methods, meetings. Outputs, communication management plan, project document updates. See, the key benefit of this is that it defines, it identifies, and documents the approach to communicate most effectively and efficiently with stakeholders. Project plan. What's a project plan? What's a project management plan? Provides information on how the project will be executed, monitored, controlled, and closed. So, let's go back to our morning issues with my fire guys. Do we have a project management plan with all the different stuff that we've talked about? Do we have a project management plan? Or can we, if we don't, can we sort of say, from here, this is one of the things that we're going to be doing? Yeah? Can we commit to ourselves? Non-verbals. You guys are communicating to me non-verbally. Sorry?
Some may have a plan, but some may not have a communication plan. For example, in our case, we have a project plan, but we didn't have, I just noticed that right now that we didn't have a communication plan. So that was something which came out, I noticed now. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Olu, you want to say something? No? Okay, great. Stakeholder register. The register provides the information needed to plan the communication with project stakeholders. For example, stakeholder register may contain identification information, name, organization position, location, role. You know, some people are very sensitive about their positions. If you get it wrong, what happens? So, you must have a central repository for all your team members to know the position that person is holding in your stakeholder. Yeah? Something as small as assessment information, major requirements, main expectations, potential influence in the project, phase in the life cycle with the most interest, and stakeholder classification. Internal, external, supporter, neutral, resistor, etc. So if you know all this information, the minute you're talking to that person, you know the frame of mind of that person. You know this guy is our supporter. So you'll cut through the fluff and you get straight into the main issues, because you don't want to waste his time and your time, because you know he's your supporter. Somebody who's hovering, who's a fence sitter, you take a different communication tack with them. Somebody who is a resistor, you know this person is against this project. What are you going to do? Yes, Ian.
In what situation would you have a stakeholder who is a resistor?
In what situation? Okay, so let's assume you're launching a new financial solution that is not regulated by the Zimbabwean central bank, and you know government types, most at least, their first default is what? What's their first default? Resistance. That's their first default. And you can understand where they're coming from, because they're regulators. Yeah? For them, it's always a glass half empty as opposed to a glass half full. See, an entrepreneur, entrepreneurs are always gung-ho, are always, we can do it. A regulator's job is to poke holes and ensure that the public is protected. Put together. Enterprise and environmental factors. The structure of organization will have a major effect on the project's communication requirements. All enterprise environmental factors are used as inputs for this process, since communication must be adapted to the project environment. So, let's take the example of Wilberforce in the morning, where you have project teams that are working in silo with the operational team, and yet they must share resources. How do we make sure that that environment does not become toxic for that project? How do we make sure? I think one key area is communication. One key area is communication. The next one is organizational process assets. And we talked about this with Ian briefly over lunchtime. The lessons learned and historical information are of particular importance because they can provide insights on both the decisions taken regarding communication issues and the results of those decisions in previous similar projects. This can be used as guiding information to plan the communication activity for the current project. Okay, let's take a quick break. 15 minutes.